Found him. That's why we bonded.
Okay.
Found him. That's why we bonded.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I am currently saying hello in the YouTube chat and reminding people to ask questions and suggest topics. This is an episode where we try to help you by answering all your questions, and nothing's off the table unless it's a super secret or super nefarious. Then you have to PM us because some things aren't suitable for public consumption. But you can ask anything. I'm not going to get upset about questions unless your questions are negative or adult or off topic. Then I might block you. But as long as it's in the realm of SEO and internet marketing, go for it.
Yeah. And if you ask something like, what's your super secret, top secret ranking sauce, we might say no comment.
Yeah, well, it's up to the individual. I'm more inclined to share everything because I'm horrible with secrets. And the only place I'm really strict is when it's other people's secrets. So if you ask me what's Lee's secret method, then I'll say you have to ask Lee. And that's the best I can do there. But if you ask me about my secret methods, I'm usually pretty open. There's only one that I know of that I'm currently not teaching anymore, and that's the stealth SEO. So you can ask about it as a topic of discussion, but I'm not going to go into the details on how I implement it. But if you want to say, what is it, or how does it fundamentally work, that's all fine. But I won't go into the secret sauce of my methodology. Taught that one time only, and that was it. So you missed it. Sorry.
People really want to know my secret sauce. Here it is.
Yeah. So, Lee,
yep.
Is there going to be a rollback?
Is there going to be a? I would say
that's based the on 8-ball.
Hold on a second. Let me just see. Gotta consult the Oracle here. The thing is, the data is, yeah. I mean, there's always rollbacks. There's continuous, stuff, and folks that are following the update closely, it's still not over theoretically. So until it's over and there's been a period of calm, I'm going to say, yeah, there's going to be a rollback because that's how it always is.
All right. Just reminding people, if you need press releases, go to our non-monetary sponsor. They help us with SEO testing in the area of press releases so that we can give good information to you guys, but no money's changing hands. They're one of 3 that I recommend. There's a lot of things I like about Magic PR. So go reach out, talk to Madge, see how he can help you. All right. Next on the boilerplate, Lee, your most recent batch of tested SEO training students, this 8 weeks of training is approaching its conclusion. Can you give us the highlights of what happened this iteration?
Yeah, we actually wrapped up last Wednesday, so we are done. And our next one starts May 15th. So if people are interested in jumping in on that, they need to reach out. But we do a project where we basically rank a site from scratch. This particular time we focused on local, and we were able to get the first page 1 ranking 5 weeks into the training. So, and as of right now, we're still tracking it going afterwards. 5 out of the 6 services are on page 1, and that's done without a GMB. So we don't have the the normal thing that you have to push it in for the geo relevance. So we had a great time with that. It was a lot of fun to see the different techniques that were utilized from the training to get the different pages to rank. But overall, it was a good time. It was a good time. We had a good group.
Yeah, and that matches my experience with the training. When I did it, I went from new website to number one, and it took about 5 weeks to get there. And so yeah, it's good to see that it's still reproducible in the outcome with the methods even today in all of this turmoil. Because I was worried when you started this group because that this particular session
Mhm.
because it was right when the Google dumpster fire started. And
Yeah,
if
that was always a
you
good
know,
time. I love it when Google does that, in a training. So, but again, it's real world. We can't sit there and wait until Google's not doing something crazy and then do it. So, it's more robust than that. So we were able to, we chose a niche. I bought a domain, no expired domain or anything like that. We did, one press release, threw up some crappy AI content, and then, let the participants apply what we were learning each week to the site and watch the rankings go up or down. And one of the fun pieces of this one is the the three groups that did the best followed just sort of the training guidelines without a whole lot of extra crap. They just followed the training guidelines. They made their changes. They built some links and then just called it a day and just let it just keep rising, rising, rising until it got up there. And now, even though the training's over, we've still been posting every few days just an update because the site keeps rising and is appearing for more keywords, which is pretty awesome. So,
now, I know that your standard playbook for doing SEO in this training is very different than most SEOs' standard playbooks. Like they're similar pieces, but they're used in different ways to different extents. With all of the Google update shenanigans, and you're in the middle of it ranking pages to number one, has anything fundamentally changed with your playbook? Is it all still in play today?
yeah, nothing is different. I mean, there are things that are the things that are different than maybe the tools that we use. So, 3 years ago, we're talking about, Jasper and Jarvis and stuff like that. Now that's no longer, a way of producing, quick drafts of content and things like that. So some of the tools get updated over time, but the fundamental methodology hasn't changed in, 4 years, since it got dialed in. It is at the core of what Google does, and it's just about figuring out, where your largest competitive deficits exist and solving those. And there's a lot of different ways. I've often said that, if Charles and Terry and you and I and Karthik and Honey all built a page for a particular keyword, the pages are going to look very, very different, but they're all going to rank well because they meet the mathematical requirements of the algorithm. So it's fairly straightforward, when you get the pieces in there. And it's always fun to see um, new participants in the training go, holy crap, that worked fast. It's kind of fun to watch and say, oh man, I'm going to go apply these to my sites. And they got a lot of really, really good results on their own um, client sites and their own personal sites as well. So it's always exciting to see that.
Now, what's different with your training from a course? Like a course is some pre-compiled videos, you watch it, and maybe you join a community group and talk about it after. This is more like weekly lessons where you walk people through the research, the actual experiments conducted, and why they work and how they work and what the implications are. And then after you witness the data of the research, you're given homework to go reproduce the research's results on your own or on the
Yeah.
group projects. And then for 8 weeks, you go through those phases where you're actually doing and seeing the result. The start of every week is the review of last week's results out
Yeah.
in the field.
Yeah, we want to make sure that everybody sees, those results week after week. And, if you're not, we'll jump on a call and say, all right, what's going on? Did you implement it a particular way? Is what we're covering this week not the core problem with your particular site? We'll analyze that, because at the end of the day, when we get done with the 8 weeks, I want everybody extremely happy with the results that they got and the money that they've made from pushing their rankings up. We like to make sure that people are doing it as efficiently as possible. So, some of the common things, people replace a lot of tools. Like 2 trainings ago, I had 2 people that dropped over $1,000 a month in tools that they were using, and just started using just what we use in the training, which is primarily Quora and a couple other things. And I like to see people that get results fairly quickly. I had one person in this training that week 2 they made their money back already. They had a bunch of local websites that they did, and they changed some things and got some explosions in rankings really, really quickly for those sites, and made their money back. So that's what I like to see most of all. So yeah, it is very different because you are implementing week after week. It's a group thing. You don't have to share your particular sites or your particular keywords, but you do share your results. So Ted, you might sit there and say, oh, I went from 55 to 37 this week. We're like, yay, and then the following week, we see. And if you're like, oh, I disappeared from the SERP, then we diagnose, you're experiencing a Google dance, or did you do something that you should not have done. So,
And one final question on this topic. Who is this training not for? Who should avoid it like the plague?
I like to see people that are making money with their SEO. I don't like course takers, because course takers will sit there and try to blend this with that with the other thing, and the so and so says this and so and so says that, and I don't give a damn. It's like, I'm showing you the elements, go implement what I'm showing you, and then argue with the results, or argue with the other theories. Don't spend your time trying to blend these things together. I had the group that performed worse in this last training did that. They were trying to pull and blend a lot of different pieces, and they were still stuck on like page 3 or 4 at the end of the training, when even some of the pages that we hadn't optimized were outranking. So if you just stick with the basics, there. And one of my personal favorite things about this is that about half to 2/3 of the people in any particular training have taken it before. And because you continue to pick up stuff each time that you go through, and you get to interact with the various SEOs. And I'll show, here's the thing, and here's what I do to take advantage of that. And you might sit there and say, oh, this is the way I do it. And Terry might say, this is kind of my process for handling that. There's not one magic way of accomplishing the objectives that we teach. So and it's really nice to see people coming back over and over and over again, because they continue to get value each time they come through.
All right, and just so you know, audience, Lee does not accept everybody. He has turned away numerous people for numerous reasons. You have to go through an interview to even be a part of the group. So if you're interested, you need to reach out to Lee. And I guess you do that through the website, or should they contact you via
You can contact me via Skype. The Skype ID is on testedseotraining.com. You should start there just to take a look and make sure that what we've described there is something that you're interested in, and then reach out to me, and we'll get on a call and talk to each other and see if we're a good match or not.
And if you're on the fence about it, I recommend you go to the website and see some of the video testimonials on the website. You can probably find a number of different names in our industry in that list, and you can see what they did and what they got from it and what they think. And yeah, check it out.
Cool.
All right, and just a reminder, last week Lee talked about his new tool, so you can go back to last week's show if you want to learn more about it, or go to witcherlabs.com or Skype Lee about it. He can tell you all about it. It's pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna end the slide deck.
Pop the questions.
I figured, well, I wanted to talk about one news story because this one comes back every couple of years. So I like to remind people that Google's saying ignore link spam and ignore 404s. And I fundamentally disagree with that advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll explain the reasons why, but in the end, you know, Google says ignore them, it's not harmful and all of that stuff. And I disagree with it. So I made this very nice response on this story. And I just wanted to mention that 404s, when your website is plagued with large numbers of them, usually what it is past incarnations of the website. So a lot of businesses will do the website redesign every 2 years. You can set your watch to it. And when they do that, they usually change the URLs. And when they change the URLs, they orphan a bunch of URLs that add backlinks, and those backlinks still exist out in the world. So now when they have their new web design, Google finds the old version's links in the world and crawls them, and it shows up as a 404 in Search Console. So that's the natural way where these things occur. And is the proper thing to do there to ignore them? No. Those are orphaned backlinks, and backlinks are important. So you need to redirect those to the most relevant internal page to recapture those backlinks and keep your authority on your current website. So even in the most natural sense of 404s, ignoring them is wrong. All right. So then another thing that happens is sometimes bad actors out in the world make websites that are so nefarious that Google turns them into scorched earth. So one example of a scorched earth domain name would be a domain name that in its past was a software piracy website or something like that. These domains are punished into oblivion and will never rank again. And when you redirect a scorched earth domain to your money site, bad things happen for a time. Your rankings plummet, penalties might transfer temporarily. Very bad things. The good news is that when this happens to you, there's anecdotal evidence and a fair amount of it that disavowing at the domain level on those occasions can usually help you recover within a couple weeks. But again, when you're hit with that, that'll produce 404 spam, but it can also transfer some negative implications. The right action isn't ignoring it. Especially since someone is actively targeting you. When somebody is actively targeting you, you should take action. Like, let's say, there's this magical device you could wear, and if somebody pointed a weapon at you, the device would go beep, 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 beep. Is the right action to ignore the beeping, or should you duck? And so you have this thing where Search Console is going beep, 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 and you're like, let's ignore it. And then, finally, you can do this to yourself. You can acquire domains that are toxic. You can point them at your money site and hurt yourself. So again, you should test those domains. on a throwaway website. And if you point the domain at the throwaway website and the throwaway website vanishes from search, do not point it at your money site. Test it for a month, see if the test site survives. And if it does, fine, then leverage it. But when you do that, just note that that newly acquired domain that you got has a history. Out in the world, that domain has backlinks to URLs you don't honor. So when you point that domain at your website, you create 404s. Now, the reason you did that was SEO. So is the answer do nothing? No, you need to redirect those URLs to internal pages so you get the SEO benefit from the acquired domain name. So again, the answer isn't do nothing. What do you think about all this, Lee?
I'm going to take a step back. It's about 2-3 weeks ago, they had an article where basically Google was saying, that don't worry about 404s, they're not going to hurt you. And I went on a rant on that one because one, it was Gary Isles had a comment on the particular thing. He said, yeah, it's probably not going to do anything bad to you. And I'm like, probably not is a slippery fucking phrase. And we've actually seen where 404s, having a lot of 404s on a site can take your overall rankings down. And by fixing that 404 problem, rankings go back up. And I just had one the other day, it was about a week or so. I was helping somebody with their site. And they're like, everything's moving kind of in a weird way. And I don't know why. And we went into their search console and they had 1,500 404 pages because the client had pruned their product offering and didn't tell the SEO. And, as soon as they pruned all those pages, those products they hadn't carried, all those pages started dropping, and they're like, what the hell's going on? So they went in and, did the 301 cleanup of all that sort of stuff. And, things are recovering now. But we've seen that over and over again. We've seen, we had another one where a colleague's client was experimenting with city pages. So they got a plugin, for their local site, created like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 city pages in the city surrounded, decided they didn't like the way they looked, so they deleted them all. They got another plugin, created like 50, 60, 70 pages and deleted them all. They're keeping all these 404s were in their sitemap and everything else, and everything just started to decline. So I was ticked off about just not dealing with 404s before we even jumped into links to 404s are not a problem. So I agree with what you said. If you've got links, coming into 404s, you do want to, to the degree possible, recapture that juice and, do the appropriate 301s. I don't think ignoring the problem is ever a good idea in this particular space because there's just too much data that we've seen that says, that it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
And, I've said it before, I'll say it again. John Mueller is not an SEO. His day in, day out job is not ranking plumbers in Google. It's not what he does. I don't think he knows how to do it. So be careful who you're taking your SEO advice from. The other thing is they specifically mentioned here the -k.html variety of backlinks. So we've talked about those in the past. That is, for all practical purposes, it appears to be a negative SEO attempt. It's a large-scale negative SEO attempt. We're not entirely sure how it works. It seems to do more damage to large-scale retailers than it does small-scale like plumbers and lawyers. So if you're seeing this on a large-scale website, I'm more worried about it having negative implications to your site overall.
But, even there, he says that Google ignores them. That's a testable hypothesis.
Yeah. So I read this morning. And actually, Ted, the first thing I did is I jumped and I scrolled to the bottom to see if you had made a comment yet. I said, this is an article Ted's going to go on a rant about. But to your point, Lee, I mean, that's exactly right. Oh, Google ignores them. Check your logs. What do your logs say? Is Google really ignoring them or not?
Well, you know they're not, because if they're in Google Search Console, it means Googlebot has traversed them
Exactly.
from the spam site to your money site. That is how it ended up in Google Search Console.
Right, but it's possible that it's there and then it's somehow removed from the link graph and those calculations. So any toxicity would be removed that way, even though it still appears in the tools. But
Faith-based SEO.
if I went to a particular website, smaller website, that didn't have a lot of backlinks, and I built 500 or 1,000 of these k.html sort of links, the question is, would it move the site in any direction? And if it does, Google does,
Well, here's the thing. On a small website, small scale, I don't see a lot of impact. But when you start getting to the size of like an online retailer with thousands of products, I've seen very noteworthy impacts. So I think you have to see, for various negative SEO, tactic, is this something that generally would apply to my industry? And so as an online retailer, I would be all over addressing this. Like, no doubt. It would be, the first day I saw it, that would be the day it got fixed. And if I was a plumber with a 5-page website and, I have 11 -K backlinks, I'm not going to care. It's not going to do anything. But here's the thing. If you have a large scale website and you're seeing this in your search console and in your link tools, then my recommended solution is really cheap and potentially quite beneficial. You get a throwaway domain name. You make it keyword related to like a product or category that isn't performing well in search and has nothing to lose. So you got a topical throwaway one-page website. Then you're going to redirect all the traffic based on the -k.html referring URLs to the throwaway website. On the throwaway website, you have a nicely written SEO topical thing about your keyword, and then you link to it to your poor performing product or category. Now, that last part's optional. You could just point to the throwaway website and be done with the problem, or you could try to use it as fuel. And so in doing this, you are actually turning the web spam into a tiered link building tier, and you are laundering it through a contextual page and back to a place that needs it. Because what we found over the past few years is all links, good links and bad links, are capable of doing good work. It's just in how you leverage them. So you can actually take this negative SEO spam, turn it into a layer on your tiered link building, and focus the lens for some useful work. And so that's what I do. Now, your options are, the reason you want to use your own throwaway website is if you point this at somebody else's money site, they can probably sue you for damages if they can prove it. Computer things are often easy to prove. So don't redirect to Disney. Probably a bad idea. But if you have your own throwaway website and you redirect all your spam traffic to the throwaway website, then the throwaway website suffers the cost of the spam attacks. So that's why we do that. And you could just let it stop there. That's a $1.99 domain and $5 a month hosting, and that solves your spammy backlink problem. And you could go the next step optionally and boost something. Boost a test site. Don't boost your money site. Set up another website that's your test and see if you can boost the test site and learn from it. Now you've turned web spam into an educational tool about tiered link building and link laundering the context into useful context. What do you guys think about that?
It's clever. I like it.
So yeah, my advice is at least redirect it to a throwaway domain, and at best, leverage it. Focus it as a lens for useful work.
So Ted, if you'll if you'll indulge me to beat this dead horse for a little bit longer. I think this is a good this article is a great lesson for folks in general to be wary of advice and who you take the advice from. There's so many problems with it that I have with this article, or there's so many ways you can take this article wrong. So number one, to your point, John Mueller is not an SEO. This article is written by someone, by Barry Schwartz. He does a great job, but he himself has said, I'm not an SEO. So now you have somebody on Twitter asking a question, a non-SEO answering it, and then a non-SEO summing up the issue and putting it together. And that's a really, really easy way to go astray. I also think it's important that you have to understand the context of the question. The person was asking, should I disavow these links? And John Mueller was kind of answering just that question. I'm not a big fan of listening to when when the Googlers will give answers on Reddit or Rumble or Twitter or wherever, or off the cuff remarks. You have to be very, very careful about those answers because they're usually not very accurate, or they're from their very specific point of view. I like the Google documentation. If you go into Google documentations, I find their information usually spot on. There's a lot of times I've stumbled onto things, thought I just cracked the code, and realized nope, Google documented it like 3 years ago, and it's something they've been saying for a while. So you just have to be very, very careful. And I think also this is another great example, and you guys have both touched on this, is that these tools, whether it's Search Console or whatever else, they often are reporting the symptoms of a problem and not the problem. The problem isn't necessarily the 404. Like you were saying earlier, Ted, the problem could be you did a migration and you didn't redirect all your pages. Or there's someone doing a negative SEO attack. If you guys remember years ago, Search Console used to have the short and missing title tags and short or missing meta descriptions. Now, I couldn't have cared less whether my title tags were short or long or whatnot. Often what I realized is that the pages that it was pulling up were pages that were a problem in some way, shape, or form. It wasn't that they had a bad title tag and meta description. It's that the pages shouldn't exist, or it was some kind of weird soft 404. This was before they were giving soft 404 reports. And I found those very, very helpful, actually. Not because I wanted to learn more about my title tags on my page, but Google was bubbling up pages that had a problem in some way, shape, or form. And so often I find that when Search Console shows you something, that's not the problem. That's just the symptom of the problem.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we beat this dead horse. So definitely don't ignore these. All right, question time. So if you want your questions answered, if you'd like us to talk about a specific topic, you got to let us know in chat. All right, I'm looking at the live chat, so all questions are visible. Let's see. Jack says, I'm seeing correlation between confidence score from the API for a brand name and Google Knowledge Graph and rankings and your money or your life. Thoughts on this and how it should influence our marketing? Well, lots of things correlate, all right? And brand name in the knowledge graph makes a lot of sense that it would naturally be there. So for example, here's something that I would consider a cost of entry. Having a website is critical to ranking well in Google. And so technically that doesn't correlate because it's a cost of entry. Since everybody does it, it's zero correlation. But it is a cost of entry. And so if you're looking at small numbers of samples in your correlation, you could come to an understanding that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. So brand, it might be a factor. It might be human behavior as well. So for example, top 10 best plumbers in Seattle, Washington. That's sentiment in the title. And we'll often see sentiment rise to the top in the factors for certain kinds of keywords. But what might actually be the real factor is not the sentiment. It wasn't saying top and best and having more sentiment than the other guy. It was the fact that CTR is a factor of its own. And so when you say top 10 best plumbers in Seattle, Washington, and somebody's looking for a plumber, yeah, I want to see the top 10 best. That's human psychology. That wins a click, but the actual factor might have been CTR. So now you have this emergent factor that no engineer at Google coded, but it's real. If you do the top 10 best plumbers in Seattle, Washington, you win the click and the CTR helps you rank. But is sentiment and title an actual factor that was written into the algorithm? So you can see how correlations, they're clues. And so just know that correlations range from this is a clue that warrants more testing to this is inconclusive and I know nothing from this. And so you gotta understand that there's that range in the correlations. And so I think what you have is a case where this is suggestive and warrants more testing. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I agree. First, I'm going to say, congratulations on pulling some data. I always love it when people will actually try to do the work of, pulling data for analysis or testing. So congrats on that. I'd love to see the data because the interesting thing in addition to what Ted talked about, we don't know the depth and there are other confounding factors. He talked about, like the top 10 best, plumbers in Seattle, Washington. But I also know that one of the biggest top 10 best users is Yelp and Yelp keyword stuffs. So they have the keyword density, which pushes them, up to the top of the SERPs a lot of time. And they also have top 10 as a title. So, removing the top 10 as a title, they'd still rank really, really well. So, how much of how to figure out which one of those is the tail and which one's the dog, requires more analysis and testing. So, if you want to reach out, I would love to see the data, and I can give you some guidelines on how to proceed with that because I know there's a lot of interest in this particular topic, and there's not a lot of great research or testing in it.
All right, let's see. He says one or two exceptions, but broadly, few sites ranking in finance without having extremely high confidence score, and vast majority of them have a corporate wiki page. Yeah, it helps to be an authority site with your own entities formalized. That's a big advantage in SEO. It's oftentimes the game is what can you do in the absence of having that? But it's very fortunate when you do have it. Let's see. Just S says, finally catching this live. Welcome to the show. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and it helps us a ton. So please do subscribe. Ranking a local site without a GMB is great. So he's talking about the tested
Yep.
SEO training. Do you see a trend of SEOs jumping on the local SEO route compared to their niche sites? Well, the vast majority of SEO clients out there are local SEO clients. So it's a numbers game. But the highest paying SEO clients are not local SEO clients, typically, unless they're big franchises. Or if you do lawyer SEO or something like that, where it's signed up. I what I tend to see is that beginner SEOs pick one or the other for a time. And then eventually, the financial needs of the business mandate that they learn both disciplines. And I teach people through my software both avenues, and it takes about an hour and a half to properly prime somebody on normal SEO and to properly prime them on local SEO. So it's like a 3-hour commitment to learn both tracks. So if you haven't learned local SEO, and you're looking for ways to do it, one way is you can subscribe to Quora, and I will train you on local SEO myself in an hour and a half. That's probably the cheapest, fastest way to do it. If you're uncomfortable watching lots of YouTube videos where you have to filter out the good from the bad. So you can go the free route like YouTube, but you have to have a good head on your shoulders to figure out what's the good insight, what's the bad insight. Or you got to find someone you know and trust. And there's a lot of people out there, but not a lot of them will teach you what they know. So a lot of people keep it guarded. So as far as I know, I think my route is probably the cheapest, fastest route to learn it if you've been reluctant and you need help. But there probably are other ways to go too. What do you think, Lee?
Here's what I see, and I've talked about this at conferences as well. We start off in internet marketing and say, hey, I want to make some money on a side hustle and stuff like this. This affiliate thing sounds good. So people will go the normal affiliate routes. I'm not going to say anything about anybody's particular courses or training, but basically they're saying, go pick a product, go get signed up as an affiliate, go pick a low hanging keyword, and bam, then you're going to make money. And after a while, they find that doesn't work. So they're like, screw it. I want to jump into lead gen. How's lead gen? So they jump over into that for a while, and then, they'll struggle with that. And then they'll say, screw it. I'm going to get clients. And then they get into that stuff, and it's like, oh, the client expectations are unreasonable, this, that, or the other. And what I find is that any one of those models can work well, but they all require you to be able to rank consistently. And that's usually the struggle. I tried affiliate and I could only rank for, keywords that were 10 searches a month. I tried lead gen, but, I couldn't crack the page one. I tried client work, but, they expect, results in almost immediately. And it takes months to pull that through. And, they're saying that if you can rank, you can bank. It doesn't matter across the board. It's not the model that does it. So, I have people that make money in affiliate, people that make money in lead gen, people that make money, in local, client-based SEO, whether it's local or, national, some people specialize in e-com. That's really what the struggle is. And when I see people jumping, I see SEOs jumping, it tells me I'm not making money over here. So I'm thinking the grass is greener over there. And generally speaking, it's not, because you have to solve the same problem. You have to be able to rank in those competitive places to extract that maximum value. So it's a lot easier to rank for, bookkeeper Tulsa than it is personal injury attorney Dallas. But one pays a whole lot more. If you grab that client, it'll pay a whole lot more, but it's also more competitive. So that tends to be what I see when people are jumping around, and they'll say, hey, what do you do? Are you doing some affiliate or some local or this, that, or the, how's that doing? Because I'm thinking about jumping into that. when I ask, those couple of questions, I find that they're basically struggling in whatever other model they are. And that comes down to rankings.
And a lot of people have difficulty finding their customers, doing the outreach and doing the sales. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people in our industry just have this phobia of having to be the salesperson, and they can't do it, won't do it, whatever the reasons are. To what Lee said, if you can rank the page, you're going to have a happy customer. And happy customers tell their buddies at the golf course, hey, I used this guy and he actually delivered. It's like the word of mouth on that kind of eliminates the need to do the work you probably don't want to do, which is the outreach for finding new customers. And oftentimes the people that know how to rank, they have a situation where they're at capacity. They don't have extra hours. They'd have to lose somebody or hire somebody to take on another client. And then they're in this luxurious spot where they can fire bad clients because they have good clients who want the help, so you can fire the bad guy who's making your life miserable. And so that's kind of where you want to be, but it, like Lee said, it all stems from being able to rank. If you can rank, then you kind of control your destiny from there.
Yeah.
I've seen this in the in-house side as well. It's the same kind of dance that I'll see people say, well, I want to be in-house, and then they'll do in-house, and then they'll say, oh, that's just too hard. I want to do, they don't say too hard, but then they'll jump to an agency. And say, I want to do agency work, and then they'll jump to a large agency or a small agency, or they'll jump between, enterprise versus a small company, and they'll kind of move around. And what I've noticed, and it's what you guys already said, a lot of folks seem to have specific tactics. They understand certain tactics and they apply those tactics, and then they kind of run out. And like, I don't know what to do now, because they're not learning how to consistently rank. Lee, you talked about this with your course. Individual tools and tactics can change, but it's the fundamentals of why do you rank? Why is Google ranking this A above B? And if you understand that, then you don't have to worry. You could be in-house, you can be out-of-house, you can consult, you can do client work, you can do rank and rent, you can do affiliate, you can do whatever you want. But it's often folks confuse tactic with strategy. It goes right back to the article that we have up here. It's a confusion of tactic. Someone's asking a tactical question: should I disavow these 404s? And then it's being conflated into a strategy of just ignore 404s, which is not to do what you should do.
Yeah, don't get me started on the 404s thing again.
Let's see. We missed a question here. Is there an updated test result of building backlinks within Google Docs? Yeah, most recently done by the Ranking Factory. They have products and services out along this regard, and I've seen some of their results, and so I would say, yes, this works. There's probably a sweet spot for the type and caliber of keywords that you can actually do with this approach with relative ease. It's probably not going to win you payday loans or anything like that. So you kind of want to think about it in terms of the low to mid competition keywords. That's kind of its ballpark where most tactics like these tend to work well. Lee, what do you think about this approach? I know you do cloud links. How do those differ from these, and do they work?
They work, but it's a cloud link on a new cloud page is no different than a Web 2 or any of these other. It's a brand new link with without a history, without a lot of power behind it and stuff like that. Now it can do things for you, but it's not going to get you payday loans. That's the thing. And there's nothing magical. We use cloud links because it was easy to program the tool to do what we needed it to do. That's why. It's not that we think that, oh, there's this mysterious, magical, unicorn-like values to cloud links. So, but the other thing is, I see where people will do something like they'll get Quora. and they'll say, I followed Cora's advice. I changed, the various things on the page and nothing happened. And it never occurs to a lot of people that maybe on page wasn't your problem. Maybe there was something else. Maybe you just needed to build links, or they'll build links. Links didn't work. The tool, sucks, or the technique sucks, or it's not about this type of link. It's about that. Well, maybe it's not that. Maybe you have a technical problem on your site that's preventing your on page and your off page from working. So we just tend to do the same things over and over again. I like on page. Maybe if I just tune the title tag one more time, or maybe if I add some supplemental content on the bottom, that'll do it. And you do it, nothing moves, and you're like, well, I've tried everything. That's I think the flaw in most of this stuff is I did X and it didn't work. I'm like, well, maybe that wasn't the problem. Maybe you solved something that wasn't a problem. And that's kind of the difference.
It's so easy to get like tunnel vision too when you're doing SEO. That happened with us, Lee, just like a month or so ago. I had a page I brought you. It's like, I'm not sure what's going on here. Why isn't this thing moving? And you looked at it, and after like maybe 20 minutes at the most, you're like, dude, you just need some links. And I added a couple links, and what do you know? Shazam! It started ranking better. So it's easy to get tunnel vision, and that's why I think it's, again, going back to your training, Lee, not to turn this into a Lee training seminar, but it's like, understand the principles, because it's so easy to get hung up on tactics and strategy. It's so easy to get hung up on specific tools or specific tactics, and you just got to take a step back and be like, okay, Google's ranking this page because it thinks it's relevant. Why does it think it's relevant? Well, the keywords and the entities and the related terms have to show up in certain zones. And why else would it consider relevant? Because it has authority. Well, how does it get authority? It has to have links. Like, you just need to kind of walk through that process, and you can solve, I'll venture saying 90% of the ranking problems out there, unless you've got something really weird going on, which will happen occasionally, but those are edge cases.
They really are. So, and what I love about yours is in that particular thing, how many links did you build? What, like 2, 3, something like that? It was like nothing.
I built one.
Oh, there you go.
Technically, there were 4 links from one domain. But yeah, it was the lowest effort. When you talk about minimal viable SEO, it was the lowest effort I could have possibly done. And I have plans on doing more, but I haven't in the past 4 weeks.
You're gonna add a second one. That's just
one
crazy.
of these days. I'm gonna add number 2 and number 3, and it's gonna go to the moon.
So he didn't. What I love about it, Charles didn't go out and say, okay, which press release service should I use, or should I buy SEO Autopilot or Money Robot, or is GSA better? He didn't go, oh, I need a bazillion of these.
Yeah.
He went, let me go build one, see what happens. And then, stuff moves up, and he goes, okay, that was the issue. It wasn't all the other optimizations and stuff that he did. Those were fine. Those were sufficient.
And another question that often comes up in discussions on this topic are, well, why don't these tactics and methods work for payday loans? And the answer is they have a 20-year head start on link building. And there is no 3-month contract or tactic of anything that negates a 20-year head start. So, if you're looking for, the magic thing you can do that equalizes 20 years of link building, that still hasn't been found yet. You can compete with them by outpacing what they did over 20 years over the course of 3 or 4 years, sometimes even 2 or 3 years. It is doable. But it's very expensive. You have to be able to cost that out to achieve a numeric goal. And, most people aren't willing to pay for that, let alone do it. And that's why you can't win payday loans. All right. SEO Fight Club team, I'm curious about your approach to tiered link building and the use of PBNs. How do you ensure your strategies are effective? Well, the first thing you want to do is never make a mess you can't clean up. So figure out what your mechanisms are to break the links if you need to undo. So if your methodology doesn't include a way to clean it up, it's a bad methodology. And then next, you need to experiment. You need to find safe places to fail and figure out the recipes with that particular backlink source that are effective for your keywords and content. So you ought to be able to prove it out with, 1 or 2 pages and safe pages that aren't going to break the bank or get you fired, and see if it's working. And then you take your successes from the testing and then you apply them to more places. And so you have to just use scientific methodology and a little bit of safety and make out your plan. And then once you do this, once you do an iteration of, oh, wow, I can get this outcome with this investment over this much time and money, and I can charge X for it. Well, now you can kind of plan out your growth. How can I get all of the customers' pages to this point? How long will that take? How much will that cost me out of pocket? How much will my business make? You have the magic keys to the kingdom because you did that test and you measured everything and recorded it. So, that's how you do it, whether it's PBNs or press releases or cloud links or Google Docs. It's all the same thing. It's all scientific method, and then you do good analysis. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% behind that. For a long time, I would, buy services from, Fiverr, other places to, test them out and see how they worked in a variety of different, combinations and tiers and things like that. And just recently, I purchased GSA and SEO Neo to do specific tests. But this morning, for example, I launched on our simple link tool, I launched 71 jobs to test an idea out. So I'll have plenty of data to see how well it works or doesn't work. And that's really, I mean, what you're talking about, just go test on these things. Once I get GSA and some of the other things up, some of my test sites are going to #1 or they're getting the hell out of the index, one or the other, because I will move the dials up and down to see sort of what works and in what conditions it works so that I can come up with a reasonable, repeatable strategy. But the way that I ensure that it works is, I understand the principles of what Google's looking for. And so I'm less tied to cloud links or PBNs or guest posts or, web twos or whatever. I don't care as much about that as, some other pieces. And that all comes from testing. So, test the stuff out and see how it works, and test it multiple times to make sure that the result you're getting is not a fluke, it's a repeatable thing.
All right, let's see. Is geo coordinate schema helpful when ranking a location page? I suspect that it is. I think the best example of this is Clint Butler's research into nothing but schema ranking. And schema is kind of an oddball. Parts of schema obviously work and quickly, and other parts of schema may or may not work, or maybe they're very slow to work. Because of this, I suspect, and there's speculation happening here, I think Google has multiple systems that look at the schema. And so the part of the system that does keyword density might tap into FAQ schema, where the part of the system that does geo-relevancy might only look at the location components of schema. And so you have these different systems looking at their relevant parts. So you have to understand that schema, different parts of it will be used by different features of the ecosystem. And what Clint and Terry Samuels basically found out is that Schema is deeply wired into Google's ecosystem, without a doubt. And B, you want it to be verbose and robust so that you are effectively communicating the right message to all of the various systems Google might have. And we speculate as to what those are, but having all the inputs in there tuned and optimized for all the different kinds of schema that are relevant to your content and industry seems to matter a lot. What do you think, Lee?
I'll give a shorter answer on this one. I'm going to say yes, but having a GMB works better than that. So if you don't have a GMB, it helps a lot. If you do have a GMB, that's the bigger signal right there. So I haven't tested having both, but I know that in areas where you don't have a GMB, having that schema is a nice signal.
And one of my leading theories in local right now is a concept I call agreement. And I think Google likes it when multiple data sources agree on a claim in a GMB. So if you claim to be from Tucson, it's good if your schema backs that claim up. It's good that your website content backs that claim up. It's good that your reviews mention that it was Tucson. It's good that you're on a roundup of the 20 best restaurants in Tucson. Like, agreement has kind of this magical power in local. And so, yeah, I agree with Lee that your GMB is kind of the hub for where agreement gets recorded and scored. Let's see. What are good and smart ways SEO and PPC work together? Well, for one, pay-per-click can tell you what keywords are worth SEOing. So that is fantastic data for an SEO. And SEO helps pay-per-click get a better quality score, which means you can have your ad campaigns at a lower CPC and a higher ranking at the lower CPC. So you can actually do a lot of arbitrage and cost savings and stuff by working together. The way that they kind of oppose each other is, let's say you're an in-house SEO and there's an in-house pay-per-click, and the company bonuses you guys based on your gross revenue for your particular channel. When companies set up those types of competitive scenarios, then you get cases where the pay-per-click people are going to bid on keywords you rank number one for, even though there are no ads there. So you could have gotten the clicks for free, but they paid money to move the organic clicks to the pay-per-click side of the revenue reporting. So you got to be careful. That's where they can really get nasty. But in general, I think there are far more benefits of the SEO and the pay-per-click working together. You get your ultimate outcomes for the business when you do. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I don't play enough in the pay-per-click space to really offer an educated opinion, so I'll just say nothing.
All right. You see anything there, Charles?
So interesting you should bring that up. We're going to run a test at give a little advertisement, give a little shout out to SEO Spring Training. There was a speaker there that discussed actually turning off the brand searches, because that's a big thing for PPC for big brands, is they'll build their brand, turning off the brand searches so that, and actually more clicks came through. So like we were talking about, we got to test it. That sounds like it doesn't sound right. But if they say it is, I trust it, I'll trust it and give it a try and see how it works. In general, though, you're absolutely right, Ted. Often in larger organizations, different people have different KPIs, and everyone always plays to their KPI. Another thing I've seen, and this is kind of along the same lines, is that if you have a large enough brand that has affiliates, what are your affiliates doing? Are they just buying your keywords? I've worked with large companies that had subcontractors that were kind of on a pay per lead, and they were purchasing support terms. So they weren't only just supporting brand terms, but support terms. And so they were actually deflecting people away from the support, giving a poor user, but their click-through rate was amazing. And they were getting all kinds of clicks and all kinds of attributions. So you really, really have to understand your numbers in this game. And unfortunately, a lot of folks, I don't know why, but a lot of folks, and I've never seen it large or small, a lot of folks don't always understand the numbers and understand the channels.
Well, the thing you have to understand about pay-per-click, if you're an SEO that doesn't dabble in it often, is that it requires that you monitor it. You must actively watch what it's doing, or you can waste terrible amounts of money. And most SEOs don't want to actively monitor their work. They want to do the work and then come back a week later and see how it did. And you do not do that with a pay-per-click campaign. You watch it several times a day throughout the day, and you make sure nothing's running off the rails and wasting your ad spend. So just note that it's very different work than SEO. There's a lot of attention to detail. But there's a lot of min-maxing too. So there's a lot of cool things you can do if you're data-driven. How can I be a mature buyer of SEO services? What questions should I ask and what to look at? I always like the one-star reviews of things not because it talks me out of stuff, but more because it tempers my expectations of what it is and what it can do, and what are the common pitfalls I should look out for. And I love that information because it's often missing from a website. And then the other thing I want to know is how long will it take for me to typically see some kind of result? I know it can vary, it can always vary, but your average customer, how long does it take them to say, yes, I saw something good from this? Because I want to figure out what it's going to cost me to give it an honest try. All right, so if it's $100 a month, does it take 3 months to see a typical result? Okay, so it's about $300 to give this an honest try, and I'm going to allocate 3 months to give it that honest try. But if you hide that information, then I have no idea what to expect. And when the costs run too high, I don't know when to quit and I get mad about it. So just, ask people, how long does it take to typically see results? Because I want to give it an honest try. And most people are very reasonable. They know that things take time. What do you think, Lee?
There's probably some good questions there. If I were buying SEO services, I'd ask to talk to, other current clients to see, that's a good thing in terms of doing the due diligence. The other thing is you could ask them this question, what do you do when you are struggling to rank a website, and see how they respond? Because if they respond with, we never struggle to rank websites, or if they, kind of look down and, they can't look you in the eye, and, that's a fairly common occurrence with them. Basically, what you're looking for is that, do they know what they're doing? And that's a good indicator of whether they know what they're doing or not.
Yeah, I like that. Like for interviews, I like to ask SEOs, what's the biggest keyword you thought you were gonna rank, but it ended up not working out, ended up being too hard. Because when you when you learn about that limit and why it didn't work out and where that limit is set, you kind of learn about the applicability of the candidate. So you know what types of challenges you can put at them where they could be successful versus what types of challenges are really wishful thinking. Like you can still put them after those, but you have to temper your expectation. And so, yeah, things that can tell you about where, a solution can be applied and how effective it can be. Those are good things to do, but you got to kind of tease out those clues because, like Lee said, everybody's going to give you the sales answer unless you get clever.
Yeah, the other thing is you want to find out if they've done something that's analogous to yours. Have you ever done plumbing sites like, mine? Have you ever ranked a plumber in a city like Chicago where I'm located? Or have you ever done, a Shopify SEO on a site like mine that's got 150,000 pages? Those sort of things, when they look at it, their responses will give you a lot of information about how much of a fit there might be versus, something else.
And always ask about what their cancellation policies are. So you want to know your contract terms if you're agreeing to a certain period, or you need to give them N months notice, because N months notice comes at a cost, and you want to make sure you understand all those costs. Let's see. What things do I have to consider before taking my e-commerce to international markets? The big one is cannibalization. So your Spanish purple paw silicone bracelet starts cannibalizing your English purple paw silicone bracelet. So I often recommend that if you're doing it from the onset, just make a different domain for each language. That way the two can rank side by side. All right. So just make them different websites. They have different content because they're already written in a different language. So just different domain, different website would be my recommendation. A lot of people try to do it with folders and hreflang, and the hreflang part is fine. But there's some hazards with hreflang because, as people mention, it can behave like an abnormally powerful canonical, and you can get some weird outcomes. So that's another reason why I kind of like the multiple domains route is you can even kill the hreflang for a language if it's causing problems. What do you think, Charles? This is really a question in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So I've dealt with international sites, and I found one of the problems we had is I had a company that insisted on having a Canadian version, UK version, Australia version, and really the only difference was the little symbol in front of the price for all the products. So there was really no difference.
Well, and how they spell color.
Yes, that was my biggest problem. I had to work hard to get folks to make at least that much of a change. Short answer was I never really found the other sites to be that successful. We constantly be seeing ourselves ranking in, for example, Canada, and the Canadian would occasionally pop up in Google.com, just regular Google.com. Now, to your point, Ted, we were doing different TLDs. So we were doing a dot. It was the same domain, but it was different because one was .uk. .co or .com or whatever it is, .au. But we href-langed them all together. So even though they were separate domains, we linked them together. In retrospect, I think your advice is exactly the way to go. Put them separately. Now, a lot of large companies will balk at that because, like, no, there's, God forbid, the Spanish version pops up in southern US at any point in time. You have to be very careful with your href-langs. They do act like a super canonical. I've had href-langs actually undo my canonical. I've had non-dub-dubs and HTTPs pop up because that's what the href-lang said. So you do have to be very, very careful that you clean it, you have to do it right. You always want to have a default set. So there's an X default. Google has full documentation on it. And like I said earlier, Google's documentation is usually pretty spot on. And they usually bring up things that you might not think of yourself. So definitely review it. Here's another big one. And Ted, you kind of talked about this earlier with like legacy sites. If for some reason you decide we're getting rid of one of our language sites, you got to clean up your href langs. You've got to clean all that stuff up. Otherwise, you're going to be pointing to stuff that doesn't exist. You're going to cause confusion with the search engine. So those are all places that you got to be very, very careful. If you're doing, depending on what your goals are, I think, Ted, your idea is probably the better way. Just separate domains, and maybe they'll both rank, and that's great. Although I could see in larger organizations where that would cause angst if the Spanish and English version were both ranking, that, folks would start saying, that can't happen. How do we fix this? So,
yeah, but then you tell them it bumped Intel to page 2, so we don't want to fix that.
well, the problem that I would see is you have a support page, and then for some reason the foreign language outranks the English one, and that would cause problems all the way up to the C-suite. So someone Googled it, and now everyone's upset over it.
But typically when that happens, it's because they're same domain or they're canonicalized, or and so when you take it off the domain and you don't canonicalize it that way, and then all of a sudden the foreign language one doesn't have the backlinks anymore. The authority drop goes down, and it should even fix that type of problem.
Right. Yeah, I think my point is what most of us here see is like, hey, great, I got 2 rankings. That's awesome. When you start getting into the large and enterprise, suddenly what we see as good, other folks see as like horrible and has to be fixed immediately.
Yeah. All right, so let's see, where am I? All right. Here we go. Online Ninja asks, are there any easy ways I can use AI in my current e-commerce to become more profitable? Yeah, I like to think about supplemental content. So let's say you have a product and it's a sterling silver amethyst bracelet. I like to create lists of things in AI to use as supplemental content. So I'd create a prompt that says, write a list of 100 things to consider when buying a sterling silver amethyst bracelet. Be sure to mention sterling silver amethyst bracelet in each item. And what AI is really good at is LSI and entities. So AI, just out of the box, when you do a prompt like that, it gets you really good diversity of LSI and entities. You do have to go back in and tune it for your variations and exact matches. That's typically where AI does a bad job. And then I start to think about types of supplemental content that can be done on all pages in a category. So we did the what things to consider when buying. You could do write a list of 100 things to consider when caring for your sterling silver amethyst bracelet. Now it's like, avoid scratches, don't use abrasive cleaners, and all of that's there. And then you could write a list of 100 occasions where you might want to give somebody a sterling silver amethyst bracelet. Amethyst bracelets for graduation, amethyst bracelets for Valentine's Day. So, write a list of recipients who might want a sterling silver amethyst bracelet. Amethyst bracelets for mom, amethyst bracelets for sister, amethyst bracelet for coworker, amethyst bracelet for friends. You see where this is going? All this supplemental content is going to expand keyword reach in a very relevant way, and it's going to get you big numbers. So we talked about 4 accordions that have about 100 things. That's 400 sentences. That's thousands of words. That's probably going to be 800 LSI, that'll be 350 entities, that'll be, you know, 300 variations and 100 exact matches, all said and done. And so when you have your accordion templates and when you have your prompts ready and you have your Cora report saying you need these big numbers, we just turn those big deficits in the Cora report into a 20-minute problem. Done and solved. And so if you're spending all your time tuning your main content, and if you need to add 400 variations to a page and you're going to do that in the main article, your article is going to be really weird. And that SEO is going to be really hard to do. You're going to struggle with that. Trying to put all the SEO in the main content. You probably felt this before. It's really hard, really weird. And then your client's going to be mad at it. So you're going to have to dial it back. And when you dial it back, then it's not going to work. And then they're going to be mad that they didn't get the ranking. So look to your supplemental content. It's the powerhouse you've actually been looking for. What do you think, Lee?
No, I agree with what you said. I think it's a good approach.
All right, let's see. Are there any ways my e-commerce website can be a topical authority? Well, it kind of is, right? You're the authority of the things you sell, I would hope. Right now I sell everything, kind of like Amazon. That's how I was in e-com, 500 categories, 25 to 50,000 SKUs. How do I have to stop selling everything, or are there ways around it? Well, I wouldn't if that's what the client has. You need to play to the client's strengths. Now, if it was my own venture and I had this legacy e-com site, I would kind of, leave it on its own, try to tune it. It's a good thing, it's making money, let's not fix that. But if I wanted to experiment in e-com, I'm really interested about this new model of e-com where you go deep in something you can sell, where all you need to sell it is a high quality photo. When people see this thing, they're going to want it and buy it. And then you go to TikTok and YouTube Shorts and you run videos on the thing you're selling and you run through your deep inventory and then you find the next thing or you restock and you repeat until you've saturated the market. And so that is a really great route, I think, because your inventory burden is very low. You're making an e-com website for one product until it sells out. And so the web development on that is small, but it does, the art form in that is you need to be able to masterfully pick a product. And not a lot of people can masterfully pick a product. So you'd have to start small and test your skills at product buying. And that's a whole different art form. That's a whole different skill set than SEO. Not all SEOs can pick winning products, even though we think we can. Let's see. Lee, what do you think about this? You dabble in affiliate.
The other way you could go with a massive site like that is content, just strictly content. You don't just have to have, the products and the product pages. You can build up content silos. I know I see a lot of, Shopify stores that'll have a blog out there that'll start to write about the different product categories and, creating content hubs around certain, categories and topics and stuff like that also bolster, they can rank for the informational stuff as well as bolstering the product categories and individual product pages. So.
And we have a couple Fight Club episodes dedicated to e-com SEO. If you haven't seen those, search back through the history and find them. And another good one is Goose Egg SEO, which I'm a big fan of because it's the easiest SEO you'll probably never do, because I don't know why people don't do it, but they don't. But I find it's the easiest SEO on earth. And then uh, in addition to what Lee said, bolstering the content, sometimes it just requires putting words people search for on a page. Did one experiment a couple years ago now for a retailer that sold wireless headsets for Xbox. And I noticed that particular retailer was ranking decent. They were often number 5 for their keywords. And, that's really good for the keywords they were targeting. That's actually amazing. So they're kind of authority in that sense, and they're kind of already there. And, what could I do to bolster them? I just, in a div on the page at the bottom, I wrote in the best wireless headset for Minecraft, best wireless headset for Call of Duty, best wireless headset for Fortnite. Just went down the game list. And it took like 24 hours, and that page, it went sharply up in traffic. So sometimes all you have to do is put the keywords people are searching for about a product onto the product page instead of just the SEO pay-per-click ones you target. There's a whole world of keywords you're neglecting. And if you stop neglecting those, you'll probably get a bigger slice of the pie, especially if you're already ranking. All right. Hey, Ted, if and when SGE rolls out, it's already in search, right? Do you envision Cora software evolving? I don't know that I would try to wrap it into Cora. It depends how they build it. If it's search result like, then maybe, but odds are it's going to be a zone in addition to search result type things. And so if it's in a zone, it probably requires a different tool set. It may have similarities in that you don't need to build AI solutions to min-max AI solutions. It turns out statistics works really well for that too. So the same math is used. But yeah, I'm not sure that it would necessarily be in Cora. It would really depend on what Google does to make that determination. Let's see. Whether, not whether. Did I typo? Might have typoed. I don't know. But you're right. They're different words. Jack says, great points. Thinking of brand as entity in the knowledge graph is a factor. Well, if it's a business, having your brand in the knowledge graph is probably a given, right? It's like very hard to get a business into the knowledge graph without their brand being there. So the problem with the correlation is that it's kind of forced in there. So you'd really have to test this out with experimentation rather than correlation. And so that's why I bring that up, is I think the correlation is still kind of inconclusive, even though you got a strong positive result. I think you need to back it up with a test. What do you think, Lee?
Agreed. 100%.
All right. So actionable takeaway question would be whether trying to force brand entity into knowledge graph would directly improve rankings beyond the links you get from doing the work itself. Well, there you're kind of comparing it to link building, and I think factors need to be tested independently. There is some value of, is tactic A stronger or faster than tactic B? But that's kind of not the framing of the question. You're asking, does A work? And does A work in place of knowing that B works? And if B works, why wouldn't you do it too? So yeah, the framing of that question is a little weird. Sometimes think this is why Google might say links isn't as important as previous, and they're kind of playing a game with that. They're trying to make you think that links aren't important. Links, if we look at the spectrum of the top 10,000 SEO ranking factors that we measure and have data for, links have fallen from the top 20. Now they're in the top 30. So if this is the spectrum, links went from here to here. Okay. So that difference is almost not perceptive when you look at that whole list of what you can spend time on. It went from here to here. See the difference? Before, after. Before, after. All right. So links are absolutely important. That has never changed. Google is saying they're not the top factor anymore, which the data confirms. It agrees. Links are no longer the #1 ranking signal, but they are still absolutely something that you must do if you want to succeed for difficult keywords. So it's a requirement. They're powerful. They still work. They're near the top. They aren't at the top. And I don't think that distinction warrants a distinction. I think it's still a top factor. What do you
Well,
think?
when I saw that, I mean, Honey showed me the article that he's referring to, and I said basically I'm tickled that I just bought link building software. It's good timing. When Google says, "Hey, it's not a big deal," I'm like, "Oh, I'm all in."
Yeah, no, nothing, in my opinion, nothing has changed with links. I think links kind of stayed static and other things kind of poked above links. So it's not that links really got deep. Maybe they did. It's hard to tell. But you could also make an argument that diversity and relevancy kind of took the cake. They got boosted. That argument is at least equally valid. So,
Right.
all right.
What we were talking about earlier, Lee and I saw the importance of links in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't have links. I added links. Things got better. So it's they're still important.
I add links to a lot of things, when we build them, and when you don't, it doesn't work. And when you add them, they work. So, it's like, this is the dumbest argument ever.
I think the key is you can't just rank with pure links. You could do that maybe 10 years ago. You could overpower the research results by just massively putting in any link in the world, all exact match anchor text, and you'd rank well. But that in and of itself is not working. I would not do that now. But
So Scott asks a similar question, but it kind of has a twist in it. As Google uses more and more AI in their algo, so that's forward-thinking question. Are backlinks becoming less relevant, more relevant, or no change? Well, there's multiple ways to read this question. So backlinks and relevance is interesting all by itself because we do believe that the backlinks that come from relevant pages and have relevant anchors give more, I guess, authority than off-topic links do. And so I would wager that over the past 5 years, it's become more and more important about the contextual nature of the links you've got. So I would say in terms of the algorithm, that is something we've kind of seen and tested and played with. So there's that side of it. Now, thinking forward with AI, are backlinks gonna become less important? Well, you still need a vote. Like, we can say a page is about a topic, and then there's a million pages about the topic. Those pages can be highly about the topic. You still need a way to sort which page is more about the topic than any other page. That becomes the game. And that's how Google is built right now. That's why keyword density and entity stuffing, and that's why all that stuff works. Google is trying to quantify which page is more about apple pie than which other page. And that's why we generally see a page dedicated to an apple pie recipe ranks better for apple pie recipe than a page that has 15 different pie recipes. Because that one page was more about apple pie than the multi-pie page. And so that's kind of what we see. AI's involvement, I think AI is going to divert, what I see now is AI answers divert people away from the organic web results. What we see with the current update, I've seen online retailers who right now in this climate got increased rank position for their important keywords and still saw a net loss in organic traffic. Imagine that. Imagine your keyword goes from number 5 to number 1 and your organic traffic sharply falls at the same time. And that is suggestive that Google is diverting traffic in the search result page away from the organic rankings to other parts of the page. And that is a scary thought. That's the damaging thing. That's why this current Google update is a dumpster fire, because people who were page 1 are now page 3 with no warning and no rationale for why. And people who are now number 1 don't even get the benefit of being number 1. The traffic still went somewhere else. And so everybody's mad. And so there's a lot of that. If you're seeing that, you're not alone. That's kind of why Google's algorithm this go around. It's a massive dumpster fire. Nobody's happy. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I'm gonna interpret that question a little bit differently. Looking at the way I interpret it is we use more and more AI over time. Do links become more or less important to rankings overall? And the way I'd look at that is just game theory. So an example, right now, a lot of SEOs have noticed that Google's partnership with Reddit has also coincided, I'm sure randomly, but with Reddit being at the top of the SERPs for a lot of things. So what happens then is SEOs go, ooh, how do I get my shit in Reddit? And we develop a lot of tactics and things like that to do that. And then the signal that Google had from before gets weakened because we screw it up. And so Google devalues Reddit and it moves down in the SERPs and something else pops up. And then, we as marketers figure out what it is and we go after that. So let's assume that TED builds the best AI tool ever. TED.ai is out. You push a button, enter a keyword, push a button, and it gives you the best SEO optimized, perfect freaking article for ranking on Google. Well, we all get TED.ai. We all push those buttons, and then we all have, from an algorithmic standpoint, equivalent pages. Now, how do we break the tie? That's got to come with traffic or links. So, I see as one, tactic like on page, which is what AI is really, really good at, as it becomes more and more prevalent and, wide scale usage, and it creates many more tie or virtual tie conditions, then the other factors in the algorithm become more important to differentiate solid pages from shitty pages. So I see over time, links coming back again, but then whatever the link thing is, we'll figure it out, and and then it'll be hit hard, and then those will, come down in their usefulness. People say, TED.AI doesn't work anymore. It's about links. People will forget about on page. They'll shift to the off page, and on page will start working again. So it's a constant, battle between Google trying to find a good, clear system, a good, clear signal, and us fucking up the signal because we just want to rank.
Now, I love that answer, but I'm really interested to see what Charles is going to say, because he's in an enterprise context where they largely don't give a crap about backlinks. They already have a mountain of authority. They just don't care. What happens, Charles, with AI? What if the mountain becomes less valuable? What if the the nuance you put into your content becomes more valuable? How does this shake up?
So I think the first assumption being made is that the AI pumps out good content or even optimized content. And I say this because I've had people come to me and say, oh, we've done something that's going to help your SEO. And I said, oh, really? And who made this determination that it was going to help my SEO? Oh, we read some blogs, and so we know what's going to, and they were ready to put site-wide changes onto the site because they thought it was going to help SEO. And it wasn't going to. So there's that, first of all, that I'm less concerned about AI than I think you guys might be, because I've seen people who try to write AI and it does not usually do a very good job from an SEO point of view. I think that the kind of the question in the question maybe a little bit is, how does an enterprise site handle it when different tactics start changing? Let's say everyone starts writing better content. How does enterprise handle that? And I would say it kind of raises the barrier of entry. So if well-optimized content just becomes the barrier to entry, if you want to rank for certain keywords, then all right, everyone has to have well-optimized content. And to Lee's point, we're going to also have to have other things. Maybe it's schema, maybe it's better internal linking, maybe it is something that, maybe it's traffic from social sites or something. Maybe it's something that hasn't been added as a factor or a zone yet. And it's a larger site, once we understand it, we can then apply it. And then we, that goes across the entire site. And then we jump back to the top of the rankings and everyone says, oh, Google's biased towards big sites. It's not because it's biased towards big sites. It's that every one of our pages is done properly. If you have your own small site, it's easy to miss this group of pages or that group of pages. When we change a template, the entire site now has, I don't know, website schema or something. And don't everyone go do that. That's the first thing that popped in my head. Then that's the power of the large sites. It's not even just the ranking or just the links, although links help for sure. I think a lot of it is that all of our templates are the same. Now that can work against us as well if we're not doing things right. If we're not doing things properly, you can look at your template and be like, oh yeah, I'm doing it wrong every place. The only thing I've found, and I've had this recently, is like, oh, I'm doing this wrong. And the first thing is I check my competitors. Oh, good, they're all doing it wrong too. I don't feel as bad, and I know that I can beat them. I know that I'm not as concerned anymore.
Yeah, the hard thing is you and I were talking about, one of those situations, and we were looking at one of your types of pages on Fox, and we're looking at some suggested changes there, and all of a sudden, you go and you've got your dev team working on this, and the changes are going to be made to 30,000 fucking pages.
Yeah.
So as somebody that doesn't deal in enterprise, I'm like, I ain't got that kind of time. Yeah. That's a lot of copy paste, but for you guys, it's okay. We figured out now we need to have this element on the page, code, rollout. And,
and I know it's going to be right on 30,000 pages, or maybe not right. It'll be consistent on all 30,000 pages.
Yeah.
So if I'm pulling a name field, or if I'm populating a name or a headline field, I know it's doing it the same way on every single page. And I don't have to worry that, oh, I copy and pasted, to your point, I copy and pasted wrong on these pages, or I forgot that group of pages. And that's the power.
let's see. What are some harmful advice that is out there right now that's hurting rankings? The one that I encounter the most because of the nature of the software I provide is people that are out there saying, don't use data. It's, charlatans. What can data tell you? Google is so big, it would take, millions and billions of data samples to know anything. Uh, and that's the advice where people that are afraid of data and afraid of math lock themselves on the outside of learning new things. So I think that kind of advice is really bad. And it's not just to sell my software, there are competing softwares, you can use competing softwares. But fundamentally, I want you to get information about how your website is different from higher ranking websites. And I want you to consider those differences and whether or not they might be material to why you rank where you do. And if you don't know how you're different than websites that rank, then what are you really doing? You're blind guessing. And so there are, 150,000 things you can spend your time tweaking on a website. And with the help of these tools, we can do the math for you and reduce that 150,000 possibilities down to 2 or 3 dozen that have good suggestive evidence that they might move the needle if you fix them. So when your guesses of what to work on get reduced in that fashion, the quality of the things you guess to work on gets much, much better. So the person who's guessing from 150,000 possibilities or the person guessing against 32 evidence-based correlations. That's why it works. That's why it works is we got the data on exactly where our deficits are, how much deficit. We can cost out the work based on that information. We can be like, well, we only work, with these 12 factors with our clients, so we only cost out those 12 factors. You can make a rate sheet even for it. And that's how you know how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, and ultimately, did it work? So you got scientific process. We saw a deficit. We fixed it. We looked, did it improve things? You get so much benefit from being data-driven and test-driven. I mean, it really hits the bottom line. Or you can blind guess. What do you think, Lee?
I think that the core in there that I see most often is people arguing from a belief that the Google pronouncements are correct. Now, sometimes they are, but in general, it's an untested realm. They don't look for, hey, could this possibly be wrong? Could 404s hurt my site? Are there circumstances where, well, John Mueller said, and so, well, we let it go, but, our site's been declining. And they're not willing to go and forget test, even challenge the assumption, consider the possibility that that's wrong. I had an SEO that reached out to me yesterday that's getting pushback from a brand client because their title tag is going out beyond the character count that displays in the field, and they are convinced, they know that that's going to tank their pages and tank their site because Yoast went, oops, you went out a few characters too far. And we're not talking about anything crazy. There's lots of tests on this that shows that doesn't fucking matter. And yet here's this group that they're willing to switch SEO agencies and everything else because they know for a fact that that's going to tank their site. They're not even questioning, they're not even looking at other data, because I guarantee you can find in their keyword pool sites that are ranking on page 1 that go out beyond the ellipsis. I guarantee it, because you see it all the time, but it's just not willing to question those beliefs because Google said, or Yoast says, or Charles said. Nobody questions Charles.
So, Charles, what things have you heard advice-wise that are harming people?
I've had large SaaS SEO companies reach out to me and tell me there are problems with my sites because title tags are too long. That is an actual thing that happened. They told me title tags were too long. I deleted their email once I said that. Then they went to my boss and told him our title tags are too long. Your SEO doesn't know anything. Then they went to his boss and told her our title tags are too long. And I was forced to embarrass them on a call with my boss and my boss's boss. I have had companies reach out to me and tell me, oh, your SEO is no good because you use the meta keywords on your site. And I had to explain to them, well, large enterprise sites use meta keywords for our internal search. And there is no place that says it hurts you. And then they tried saying that, well, it'll hurt you in Bing. And I said, prove it. And they said, well, we can't there's no way to prove it. And I said, well, if it hurt us in Bing, we wouldn't be ranking in Bing. And I started to show them page after page where we ranked #1 in Bing with pages that had meta keywords on them. I said, so if it was a negative factor, we shouldn't be ranking, should we? What happens a lot in larger organizations is folks kind of anthropomorphize Google and they think, oh, Google likes this, doesn't like that. Google likes us, doesn't like us. Google favors this site, and everyone does it. It's not just large organizations. And I try to keep explaining to folks, it's not about what Google likes or doesn't like. It's what's relevant, what's not relevant. What does Google think is relevant? What does Google not think is relevant? And it's hard to get people to think that way. It's a lot easier. It's a cheat to say, oh, Google likes this. And I probably say that myself. We probably all made those comments, but you can't do that. It's an algorithm. It's just a stupid algorithm. It's a complicated algorithm, but it's still just an algorithm. It's ones and zeros.
Yeah.
So Josh asks, what happened to the Yake signal? It came out in top SEO factors, then it disappeared. Clint mentioned that it could be a single user that was over leveraging a keyword set. And while that is possible, like when Clint goes to town on a small number of keywords, it can skew the recent data when we're looking at this month. There can be that skewing. Odds are, if I had to guess without doing a technical audit, it's all the amounts of times I told people to roll back to 7.2, which doesn't have the Yake feature. So I've been pretty aggressive at telling people with problems in the open beta to roll back. And so I think that's probably a better answer. But not saying that Clint's answer isn't possible. We know from the past it is possible, but it's just more likely that a lot of 7.5 users rolled back to 7.2 and now it's not in the data set. Somebody says, I make free tools to monetize through ads. I made a free content optimizer. However, interest is very little. I've put it in my traffic website. People aren't interested. All right. So here's the thing about SEO tools. Pricing is really fickle because the number of units you are going to sell is not going to be based on your pricing. I know that's counterintuitive. Whether you sell it for $10 or whether you sell it for $300, that's largely not going to matter. What's going to matter is the size of your audience is going to be a better indicator of how many units you can get sold. All right. So with that, you have to plan that, oh, I'm going to get, 300 monthly subscribers. Well, we all put that into our marketing plan and the numbers look great in a spreadsheet. But what happens when in the first 6 months you get 27 subscribers? Does that mean you're closing your doors? And if it's only ad revenue driven, ouch. You're getting ad clicks from 27 people. So that's going to be very hard to pay the bills. So you need to actually price your software so that it is worth maintaining, that it is worth making better. You need to price it so that you can continue to exist, and it needs to be priced in a way that any opportunity that comes by isn't a better opportunity. So if your pricing's too low, you've killed your business. All right. And that's probably what you've done here is you've priced yourself in a way where it'll never make money to put time into it, maintaining it. And that's bad. And so you need to consider those things into your product design and into your product life cycle, because what customers want is they want a good solution to a common problem where you make good on the promise to keep trying to make it better. All right. It doesn't even need to be perfect. You just got to keep trying to make it better. And so it needs to be priced in a way that that can happen. What do you think, Lee?
The thing that I've always done with any product or service, the thing that's differentiated success from failure is showing that the damn thing works. And so if I had, like Quora is a good example. A lot of people use Quora and they show, ranking increase after ranking increase after ranking increase, in spite of the fact saying, it's a challenging tool. There's a lot of data there. There's a lot of recommendations. There's, things that you have to think about there. It's not a push button solution by any stretch of the imagination, but it works, which is why the user base continues to grow over time. So when you see marketing of SEO products and services, you always see, the graphs going up and to the right and the rankings going up and to the right. And people are like, oh man, I want that. And they buy it. And they'll buy because they think it's going to increase. They'll stay because it actually does improve their results. And so, to the degree possible, when you have a product, if it's not performing in the marketplace, go get it, go get those case studies out there, show that it works and show that it works on something meaningful. Because if I showed you, in only 3 weeks, my tool got me to, page 2 for best bald bookkeeper Tulsa, you're not going to be impressed with that sort of, it's a case study, but it's a weak case study. Show that it works on things that are meaningful, that would be the typical SEO would want, and they'll give your stuff a try.
Would you still recommend using and hiring writers as an agency? I think the job description has changed. Like, I wouldn't hire them as writers. I'd rather task them with editing. Here's things that were submitted from the field. Here's things submitted from AI. Can you actually tune it for these KPIs and make it better? And so I think there's high demand for editors. I think you just don't want to market yourself as being the higher cost, slower performing alternative to technology. There's a better way. Be the editor, transition. If you were formerly a writer, that gives you really good experience. Now evolve into an editor, and I think you'll find a lot of great opportunities in working with these new content sources. And so that's where I think the demand has shifted until they make an AI editor. But I haven't seen one of those yet. What do you think, Lee?
I agree. It's not a good one. And a lot of this comes down to the cost of producing, a first draft with AI versus a human, a cost of editing, your draft with a human, and sort of what that flow looks like, and the throughput constraints that you have as an agency. Because if you're having a hard time finding enough writers to meet the demand, then you've got a different problem than if you've got too many writers and not enough content required.
And a place where human beings are really valuable is figuring out topics that people give a crap about. So if you can make the clickbait, if you can seed the system with good ideas, being the idea generator might even be more lucrative than being the person who, or technology that executes the content. So if you have that creative direction, I mean, maybe you don't want to be the editor. Maybe you want to be the creative idea person within these organizations. All right, so let's see. We got to wrap it up here. We'll do a couple more questions. Got a client website, has 400,000 index pages, 500,000 no index pages, 150,000 404 pages. And I'm going to guess, just thinking out loud here, if you got a spreadsheet with all the distinct canonical URLs, is that going to be 25,000 pages of actual pages? So the first thing right off the top is runaway manufactured URLs, duplicate content, faceted navigation, infinite loop, stuff like that, and past incarnations of infinite loops still out there. I would not go first to redirecting all of that without understanding it. So I would get your weblogs and I would see what Googlebot has been getting into that they shouldn't be getting into. Find those infinite loops and get them fixed first. We'll talk about redirects once we understand the problem. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think, here I would say, Charles has got a great set of processes for dealing with situations like that. I might reach out to him and, schedule a consult. That's my 2 cents on that. I think it'd be, with a client that size and with that many pages, it'd be well worth scheduling time with him.
All right, on episode 218, Ted mentioned he was going to focus more on testing in 2024. Any updates there? I'm somewhere between 200 and 300 tests and growing. I do have numerous interesting insights, and I will tell you, I am planning on saving all of the best juicy ones for my return to speaking, which hopefully, if I get the invite, will be at Rockstars 2024 this fall. So, do I have tests? Yes. Did I repeat Clint Butler's Nothing But Schema? Yes, I did. Can I confirm Clint Butler's research is spot on? Yes, I can. Can I confirm that there is a minimum viable schema formula that is even more compact than what Clint did? Yes, I can. Was my nothing but schema page more nothing than Clint's? Yes, it is. Clint had a top nav and a footer nav with nothing in it. I just made the whole body tag empty. So I had a title tag and schema and nothing else. So mine is more nothing than Clint's. Clint got the idea originally from Terry Samuels, who did it first. So this is now 3 SEO testers repeating the experiment and comparing notes. So there's that. So yeah, my test.
Just as a tease, can you tell us if backlinks are still a thing?
Backlinks are still a thing. Digital Ear says that Clint Butler guy is awesome, and yeah, Clint is amazing. So I agree with Digital Ear. All right, so we'll leave it there. Honey says, I love Clint. He's the best. Don't tell Lee.
What?
Oops.
You better run. You better run.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Sorry it was such a long one, but we wanted to answer every question. So if I missed your question, bring it back next week. It was by accident. It wasn't on purpose. So thanks, everyone.